Verse for opening a sutra. The unsurpassed profound and wonderful Dharma is difficult to encounter in hundreds of millions of aeons. I now see and hear it, receive and uphold it, and I vow to fathom the Tathagata's true meaning. The wonderful Dharma, Lotus Flower Sutra, a parable, Chapter 3. The Buddha, wishing to restate his meaning, spoke verses saying, Suppose there was an elder who had a large house, which was very old, and so was collapsing. The walls were high and precarious, the pillars rotting at their bases, the beams and ridgepoles aslant, the foundations and stairways crumbling. The walls and partitions were cracked and ruined, the plaster flaking and falling off. The thatch was falling every which way, and the rafters and eave poles were coming loose. The partitions on all sides were bent and misshapen. It was filled with all kinds of filth. There were 500 people dwelling within it. There were kites, owls, hawks and vultures, crows, magpies, pigeons and doves, black snakes, vipers and scorpions, centipedes and millipedes. There were geckos and myriapods, weasels, badgers and mice, all sorts of evil creatures running back and forth. There were places stinking with excrement and urine, oozing with filth, with dung beetles clustered upon them. There were foxes, wolves, and yekan, who nibbled at, trampled on, and devoured corpses, scattering the bones and flesh. Then packs of dogs come running to grab them, hungry, weak, and terrified, seeking food everywhere, fighting and shoving, snarling, howling, and barking. The terrors in that house and the sights were such as these. Li Mei and Wang Liang were everywhere. Yakshas and evil ghosts were eating human flesh. There were poisonous creatures of all kinds, and evil birds and beasts, hatching their young, each protecting its own. Yakshas raced to the spot, fighting one another to eat them. Having eaten their fill, their evil thoughts grew more inflamed. The sound of their quarreling was dreadful to the extreme. Kumbanda ghosts were squatting on high ground, sometimes leaving the ground a foot or two, as they wandered to and fro, amusing themselves as they wished, grabbing dogs by two legs and striking them so they lost their bark, twisting their legs around their necks, frightening the dogs for their own pleasure. Further, there were ghosts, their bodies very tall and large, naked, black, and thin, always dwelling therein, emitting loud and evil sounds, howling in search of food. Further, there were ghosts with throats like needles. Again there were ghosts with heads like oxen, now eating human flesh, and then devouring dogs. Their hair was disheveled. They were harmful, cruel, and dangerous. Oppressed by hunger and thirst, they ran about shouting and crying out. There were yakshas, hungry ghosts, and all sorts of evil birds and beasts, frantic with hunger, facing the four directions, peeking out the windows. Such were the troubles and terrors beyond measure there. This old decaying house belonged to a man who had gone but a short distance, when before very long the rear rooms of the house suddenly caught fire. All at once, all four sides were enveloped by raging flames. The beams, ridgepoles, rafters, and pillars shook and split with the sound of explosion, snapped apart and fell, as the walls and partitions collapsed and fell in. All the ghosts and spirits screamed loudly, while the hawks, vultures, and other birds, the kumbandas, and so forth, ran about in a panic, unable to get themselves out. Evil beasts and poisonous insects hid away in the holes and crevices, while the Pisacha ghosts also dwelt therein, their blessings and virtues scanty. They were hard-pressed by the fire. They wrought harm on one another, drinking blood and eating flesh. As the packs of Yekhan were already dead, monstrous evil beasts raced to devour them, while billows of stinking smoke permeated all four sides. Centipedes and millipedes and various kinds of poisonous snakes, burnt by the fire, fought to escape their holes. Kumbanda ghosts grabbed and ate them. Further, all the hungry ghosts, the tops of the heads aflame, tormented by hunger, thirst, and heat, ran about in terror and distress. So it was in that house, terrifying to the extreme, with dangers and conflagrations, a host of troubles, not just one. At that time, the owner of the house was standing outside the door, when he heard someone say, "All of your children a while ago in play went into this house. Being young and ignorant, they delight in play and cling to amusements." Having heard this, the elder entered the burning house in alarm. Intending to save them from being burned, he warned his children of the host of disasters, the evil ghosts, the poisonous insects, and the spreading conflagration. A host of sufferings in succession are continuous without interruption. The poisonous snakes and vipers, and all the yakshas and kumbanda ghosts, yekhan, foxes and dogs, hawks, vultures, kites and owls, and varieties of centipedes, are frantic with hunger and thirst, and terrifying to the extreme. There are so many sufferings and troubles, so much increased by this great fire, but all the children without knowledge, although they heard their father's warnings, still clung to their amusements and sported without cease. At that time, the elder further had this thought, "Being like this, my children add to my worry and distress. Now in this house there is not a single thing in which to take pleasure, and yet all these children are intoxicated by their play, not heeding my instructions. They will be injured in the fire." Just then he thought to devise expedients. He said to the children, "I have all kinds of precious playthings, fine carriages, wonderful, bejeweled sheep carts and deer carts and great ox carts, now right outside the door. So come out, all of you, for I have just for you had these carts made, just as you wish. You can play with them." When the children heard him speak of carriages such as these, they immediately raced out in a scramble to a clearing where they were then safe from harm. The elder, seeing that his children had escaped the burning house and was standing at the crossroads, sat on his lion's throne and rejoiced to himself, saying, "Now I'm happy. All of these children were hard to bring into the world and raised. Stupid, young, and without knowledge, they went into this dangerous house, swarming with poisonous insects and fearful lime ghosts, ablaze with a great fire, raging on all sides. But all these children still clung to their amusements. I've now rescued them and saved them from disaster. Therefore, of all people, I'm the happiest." Then all the children, knowing their father was sitting at ease, all went before him and addressed him, saying, "Please give to us the 3 jeweled carts that you promised to us, saying, 'If you children come out, I will give you 3 carts, just like you wanted.' Now the time has come. Please give them to us. The elder, having great wealth and storehouses containing much gold, silver, and lapis lazuli, mother of pearl and carnelian, used these precious things to make several great carts. They were decorated and adorned, surrounded by railings, hung with bells on all four sides, with golden cords strung about them, and gem-studded nets spread above them. There were golden flowered tassels hanging from them everywhere, and various multicolored ornaments encircling them. Soft silk and cotton made up the cushions, and fine coverings valued in the thousands of millions, pure white and sparkling clean, were spread atop them. Great white oxen, plump, strong, and powerful, of fine appearance, were yoked to the precious carts. They were surrounded by many footmen, who were attending to them. Such fine carriages as these were given equally to all the children. Then all the children danced for joy. They mounted their jeweled carts and rode off into the four directions, happily amusing themselves in unobstructed comfort. I tell you, Shariputra, I'm like this too, the honored among many sages, the father of the worlds. All living beings are my children, deeply attached to worldly pleasures. They have no wise thoughts at all. In the three realms there is no peace. They are like a burning house filled with many sufferings, and frightening indeed. Ever present are the woes of birth, old age, sickness, and death, fires such as these, raging without cease. The dust-come one has already left the three realms' burning house behind. Quietly I dwell at ease, in forest and field at peace. And now it is that the three realms entirely belong to me, and in them all the living beings are children of mine. But now this place is filled with calamities, and I am the only one able to rescue them. Although I instructed them, they do not believe or accept because of their deep attachment and greed to all the defiling desires. Using these expedients, I speak to them of three vehicles, causing all living beings to understand the pain of the three realms. I reveal and extensively proclaim the way which transcends the world. All of these children, if they fix their minds, can perfect the three clarities and the six spiritual powers. Some shall become conditioned enlightened ones, and others irreversible bodhisattvas. Shariputra, I, for living beings, speak this parable of the one Buddha vehicle. If all of you are able to believe and accept these words, you shall, in the future, realize the Buddha way. This vehicle is subtle and wonderful, pure and foremost in all the worlds. It is the most supreme. The Buddhas rejoice in it, and all living beings should praise it as well. Make offerings and bow before it. Limitless thousands of millions of powers and liberations, dhyana samadhis and wisdom, and the Buddhas' other dharmas are obtained in a vehicle such as this. I cause all my children, night and day for many aeons, ever to amuse themselves in the company of the bodhisattvas and the host of hearers, riding this precious vehicle straight to the field of the way. For these reasons, though they seek in the 10 directions, there is no other vehicle except for the Buddhist expedience. I tell you, Shariputra, that all of you are my children. I am your father. For many aeons you have been burdened by many miseries, and I have saved you all, leading you out of the triple realm. Although earlier I said that you had passed into quiescence, it was only an end to birth and death, and not real quiescence. What you should accomplish now is nothing but the Buddha's wisdom. If there are bodhisattvas within this assembly who can single-mindedly listen to the Buddha's real Dharma, although the Buddhas will on at once employ expedient devices, the living beings they transform all are bodhisattvas. If they are those of little wisdom, deeply attached to love and desire, for their sakes I teach the truth of suffering. Living beings then rejoice, gaining what they never had, for the Buddha's teachings of suffering's truth is true, real, and not false. If there are living beings who do not know the origin of suffering, who are deeply attached to the cause of suffering, unable to live if for even a moment, for their sakes, I expediently speak of the way. The cause of all suffering is rooted in desire. If one extinguishes greed and desire, suffering has nothing to rest upon. The extinction of all suffering is called the third truth. For the sake of the truth of quiescence, one cultivates the way. Living all suffering's bonds is called the attainment of liberation. From what is it that these people have been liberated? The mere separation from the false is called liberation. In reality, they have not yet attained total liberation. The Buddha says that these people have not yet truly reached quiescence because they have not yet attained the unsurpassed way. It is not my wish to lead them to quiescence. I am the Dharma King, at ease within all dharmas. I manifest within this world to bring peace and tranquility to living beings. Shariputra, this Dharma seal of mine is spoken because I wish to benefit the world. Wherever you roam, do not propagate it wrongly. If there be those who hear it and rejoice, receiving it atop their crowns, you should know that such people are Avairvatika, those who believe and accept the Dharma of the Sutra. These people have already seen the Buddhas of the past, reverently making offerings and hearing this Dharma as well. Those who are able to believe what you say, they then see me, and they see you, and also the Bhikshu Sangha, as well as all the Bodhisattvas. This Sutra of the Dharma flower is spoken for those of profound wisdom. When those of shallow understanding hear it, confused and deluded, they fail to understand it. The hearers, everyone, and the Pachika Buddhas find the contents of this sutra far beyond their powers. You, Shariputra, gain entry to this sutra by means of faith. How much the more so other hearers? Those hearers, because of their faith in the Buddha's words, comply with this sutra, but it is beyond the range of their own wisdom. Further, Shariputra, to the arrogant and lazy, and those who reckon the view of self, do not speak this sutra. Common folk of shallow understanding, deeply attached to the 5 desires, hearing it will fail to understand. Do not speak it to them either. If there be those who do not believe and who slander this sutra, they thereby sever all worldly Buddha seeds. Or if with a scowl they harbor doubts and delusions, you should listen now as I speak of the offense retribution, whether a Buddha is in the world or has entered into quiescence. If there be those who slander a sutra such as this one, who seeing others read or recite it, copy it out or uphold it, scorn, despise, hate, and envy them, and harbor grudges against them. As to their offense retribution, listen now once again. These people at life's end, will enter the Avicii hells for an entire aeon. At the aeon's end, born there again. In this way they will revolve through uncountable aeons. When they escape from the hells, they shall take the bodies of animals, such as dogs of Yehkan, tall and emaciated, mottled, black and scabbed, repulsive to others. Further, by human beings, they'll be hated and scorned, always suffering from hunger and thirst. Their bones and flesh will be withered up. During their lives, they'll be pricked by poisonous thorns. When dead, they'll be buried under tiles and stones. They suffer this offense retribution because they have severed their Buddha seeds. They may become camels, or they may be born among asses, always carrying heavy burdens and beaten with sticks and whips, thinking only of water and grass and knowing nothing else. They suffer retribution such as these because of slandering this sutra. Some may become Yehkan, entering villages, their bodies covered with scabs and sores, and also missing an eye, beaten and stoned by young children, undergoing all this pain, even to the point of death. Having died in this manner, they are then reborn as huge serpents, their bodies as long as 500 yojanas. Deaf and stupid without feet, they writhe about on their stomachs, stung and eaten by many small insects, undergoing suffering day and night without respite. They suffer such retribution for having slandered this sutra. If they become humans, all their faculties are dim and dull. They are squat, ugly, palsied, lame, blind, deaf, and hunchbacked. Whatever they may say, people will not believe them, their breath ever stinking. They'll be possessed by ghosts, poor and lowly, the servants of others, always sick and emaciated, with no one to rely upon. Although they may draw near to others, others will not think of them. If they should gain something, they will quickly forget and lose it. Should they study the ways of medicine, following the prescription to cure illnesses, they'll only make others' illnesses worse, even to the point of death. If they get sick themselves, no one will try to save or cure them. Although they take good medicine, it will only increase their pains. If they meet with rebellion, they will be plundered and robbed. People with such offenses will perversely be subject to such misfortunes. Offenders such as these will never see the Buddha, the king among the sagely hosts, speaking the Dharma, teaching and transforming. Offenders such as these will always be born in difficult circumstances, insane, deaf, with mind confused. They'll never hear the Dharma. Throughout aeons as countless as the Ganges river sand, they'll be born deaf and dumb, with all their faculties incomplete. They'll always dwell in the hells, roaming there as if in pleasure gardens, or born in the other evil paths, which they will take as their house and home. Among camels, asses, pigs, and dogs, they are the places they will walk. They undergo such retribution because of slandering the sutra. If they become humans, they'll be deaf, blind, and dumb, poor and decrepit, yet adorning themselves therewith, swollen with water, or else dehydrated with scabs and boils, and other such illnesses. They will clothe themselves. Their bodies will always stink of filth and impurity. Deeply attached to the view of self, their hatred shall only increase. Ablaze with sexual desire, they are no different than birds or beasts. They'll suffer such retribution for having slandered this sutra. I tell you, Shariputra, were I to speak of the offenses of those who slander this sutra, I would not finish to the end of an aeon. For these reasons I expressly tell you, Do not speak this sutra among those who have no wisdom. If there are those with keen faculties and wisdom, which clearly comprehends, with much learning and a strong memory, who seek the Buddha's path, for people such as these, you may speak it. If there are those who have seen in the past hundreds of thousands of millions of Buddhas, who have planted wholesome roots, who have deep and firm minds, for people such as these, you may speak it. If there are those who are vigorous, ever cultivating minds of compassion, not sparing body or life, for them you may speak it. If there are those who are reverent without any other thoughts, who have left the common stupid folk, who dwell alone in mountains and marshes, for people such as these, you may speak it. Further, Shariputra, if you see people who have cast aside bad-knowing advisers and draw near to good friends, for people such as these, you may speak it. If you see disciples of the Buddha holding precepts as purely as pure bright jewels, for people such as these, you may speak it. If there are those who have no hatred, who are straightforward and gentle, always merciful to all beings, and reverent of all Buddhas, for people such as these, you may speak it. Further, if the Buddha's disciples who in the great assembly, with minds clear and pure, use various causal conditions, parables, and phrases to speak the Dharma without obstruction, for people such as these, you may speak it. If there are bhikshus who, for the sake of all wisdom, seek the Dharma in the four directions, with palms together receiving it atop the crown, who delight only in receiving and upholding the canon of great vehicle sutras, refusing to accept so much as a single line from another scripture, for people such as these, you may speak it. If there be those who, with mind intent, seek the Buddha's shariras, or who likewise seek the sutras, and attaining them, hold them atop their crowns, such people will never again resolve to seek other sutras, nor ever have the thought to seek the writings of outside ways. For people such as these, you may speak it. I tell you, Shariputra, were I to speak of the characteristics of those who seek the Buddha's path, exhausting aeons, I would not finish. People such as these can believe and understand, and for their sake you should speak the wonderful Dharma, Lotus Flower Sutra.